Good morning. I don't see Mr. Heilman yet, but I'm sure he'll be joining shortly. Once again, we have a very tight schedule and a lot to show you all. So
Okay. Let me ask you this. Would you recommend us waiting? We did wait a couple minutes yesterday. Maybe we can wait a couple minutes.
he just jumped in.
Perfect. Okay, let's go. Thank you.
Let me share my screen from the get-go today. So obviously we're on day 2 of our study session. Today we're jumping into Public Works and the CIP. Our objectives today, first, we're going to go through our follow-up items, and then we'll hit the general fund operating budgets for Public Works, and then we'll go through the CIP budget and some of our plans for those projects that remain unfunded currently. The first follow-up item is the Desert Willow cash analysis that we showed you yesterday. We made some of the changes that were requested so that you could see the effects of the amenity fee reserve monies being deposited after NOI is considered. So you see the new format there. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Veronica.
You're very welcome. And again, we will be updating this quarterly for you all.
And will you send that out, or have you already?
I have not, but I'm happy to.
Great.
Veronica, maybe an additional point, because I know this has been an area where residents are very interested. Is there something where this could be a direct link on the website, so it makes it easier for folks to have an understanding instead of trying to dig through it? Is that a possibility?
Let's see if we can make something that is a little more user-friendly and put that out there, but generally the same information.
Thank you.
I know that at times Kemper Sports is pretty, they guard their financials because there is competition out there. So we just want to be sensitive to that and maybe run it by Derek first.
We'll work on that together. Thank you for the reminder, Sabby.
Sure, thanks.
Sure. Okay, so we'll move on to the next follow-up item, and that was the transfers in broken down. These are the ones that Karina had asked about yesterday. Traffic safety is about $4,700, cannabis at 3.1, AIPP 120,000 for staffing, and then the office complex for various civic center cost pulls about 300,000. If there are no additional questions, we can move on to the next one. And I apologize, I can only see like 3 faces right now, so holler at me. The next item we have was the question about the North Sphere development. Martine, do you want to jump in on this one, or it's pretty self-explanatory? I don't see him.
The question I would have for Martine or whoever is that the total universe, or are there additional areas that just have not even submitted plans?
And it looks like yellow is called future project, which would probably be just what you described.
Yeah. The map, there he is.
Yeah. Good morning, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. I caught a little bit of that question. Debbie, would you mind repeating that?
Sure. So on this chart, we see that the total of approved, under review, and under construction is somewhere around 4,600. There are additional areas that have not that are not part of that data, that have not yet even been submitted. And if so, do we know how many potential units that would be?
Yes. For instance, the yellow, highlighted yellow, number 19, that has approximately 800 more units, but has not been submitted for review yet. That is the refuge project that you as a SARTA board approved a purchase and sale agreement. And that is going to be coming this year. Also entitled, but not yet under sort of specific review, is the SARTA 170 acres. I don't think you can see my cursor, but that is, but yeah, there's, Veronica can point that out. And that there has approximately another 2,500 units that are part of the specific plan. And there are a few others that you see kind of in the general area. So in all, we could see an additional, 3 to 3,500 units on top of the ones that we've shown here on the left-hand side.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
I would appreciate perhaps an updated map, including that information, as well as a total for rooftops completed in the North Sphere. All those that are a done deal, so we get a sense of the magnitude, total magnitude, once we have built out.
Absolutely, we can do that.
It would be helpful if we could have a spreadsheet to accompany the map. Would be really helpful, I know, to all of us.
That would be no problem. We already have that information. We can just add on to this map and then provide an updated spreadsheet to this information.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. If there are no further questions on this one, we'll move on to the next follow-up item, which is the BB&K contract. Their final year is August 31st, 2024. Or that's the deadline on their contract. So obviously they will be going out to RFP prior to August. I'm sure it'll be in the early part of 2024 is when we'll begin that. I have had conversations with Heather Horning, and we're going to be looking through that soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So now we can jump right into the Public Works General Fund budgets. I will ask Randy's already elevated. Randy, take it over.
All right, thank you, Veronica. Good morning, members of the City Council. You're going to have a tag team presentation this morning from myself, Andy Ramirez, and Amy Lawrence, covering for Andy Firestein this morning. First up is the administration and engineering portion of the department. A couple of things to highlight on this slide. At the time that we prepared the slides, we had 2 vacancies in this work group. One of those vacancies has been filled. That's our second construction inspector. So that remains one vacancy to be filled in this work unit. A couple of things to highlight from department successes. We completed 5 roadway construction projects. In addition, we completed 3 active transportation projects in the last fiscal year. And something to really highlight is 5 capital planning efforts that are informing the creation of the 5-year CIP moving forward. And we'll cover that in some later slides. We've been busy, like other city departments, to backfill positions, replace folks that have left the city. And then amongst all that, the department has been working to update procedures, processes, policies. In terms of highlights for initiatives for next year, you see on the screen, we want to continue with process improvements using technological tools to help us do our jobs more efficiently, more comprehensively. Finishing up a President's Plaza project, as well as a lot of pavement maintenance. And then the last bullet, a lot of ATP, active transportation program projects. We covered those in a little more detail last Thursday at the study session. And this department is always looking for external funds to augment the city's local funding. And this morning was on a call with our consulting team and learned of a new federal funding opportunity called Safe Streets for All. And we're going to be looking very hard at that funding source. So stay tuned on that. And of course, our strategic investments in preventative maintenance and project management and asset management have been keys and key activities to the department this last fiscal year. Let's move on to the next slide, Veronica. Thank you. So some things to highlight on this slide. Our equipment purchase proposal for the next fiscal year includes recreational field leveling equipment. I think of it as a Zamboni for sand. And Andy can share more on that as needed, and also some building improvements at the corporate yard. The primary expenditure in the department, of course, is on salaries and personnel related investments. Professional services include continued support for city engineer, city surveyor to support our capital improvement program, as well as some supplemental inspection and traffic engineering support for day-to-day needs. That concludes what I wanted to say about this slide. Any questions so far?
Question?
Sure, Sabby.
Thank you. At one point, we were looking at an electric sweeping vehicle for CV Link, whether funded by us or grant or CVAG, and we saw that some other cities have that specific type of equipment. Is that still a possibility?
Yes, we are pursuing that. I think Andy's going to cover that.
Thank you.
And I probably could just answer that quickly. We were able to get a cost estimate for that piece of equipment. As of a few months ago, it's about $200,000. And so we do have that request in our white paper for the CIP request.
Okay, and I don't know if there's any opportunity to collaborate with CVAG because, you know, maybe they'll partially fund us as a test for the rest of CV Link. That may be a fantasy, but you don't know till you try.
We'll definitely make that outreach.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We'll bring our hat. Great. Any other questions? Then I'm going to turn this. I think the next slide is over to Andy Ramirez, and you're going to hear him talk about the budget.
Happy morning to everybody here. We'll start off with one vacancy that we have for facilities, and I'm happy to share with you that we are finalizing today the review of applicants for our facilities manager position. You may be aware of this. The city of Palm Desert has an extensive footprint for facilities, more than most cities in our valley, and so really proud of the team that we currently have and wanting to expand that out just a bit. Quickly, as a highlight of department successes, the Historical Society was one of those facilities that experienced some deferred maintenance some months ago. We just grabbed the bull by the horns, and so we finished phase 1 and 2 of the CIP for the Historical Society. Phase 1 was completed 30% under budget. I'm happy to share that with you. And we have security cameras, a new fire alarm system there at one of our jewels here in the city. And so really proud of the team that came together to make that happen. Next, in regards to our green initiative, as a city, we provided not only management to the O&M contract for the EV charge stations, but I'm happy to share with you that from November to April, so November 2021 to this April, 36.5 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions were evaded here at our city. So very happy to share that with the council. As far as major initiatives for this coming year, we're wanting to develop a 5-year capital improvement and maintenance program for city facilities. And so we want to make sure it's a comprehensive program. It'll include our city hall, the fire stations that we currently maintain, the Aquatic Center, the Historical Society, and others. Another item that we've been looking closely at over the past few weeks is the security here at City Hall. And so our sliding doors, as you may know, they're about 20 years old. They're oldies but goodies, but at the same time, we want to look at improving the hardware and also the software that's behind the hardware. And so we're working very diligently. We were asked to kind of advance this a little quickly from our city manager, and we really appreciate that opportunity. We also want to include the fly blowers. So mosquitoes are definitely not our friends here in the summer. So the fly blower mechanism that will go on the outside of the doors is going to be pretty important for us in the future. And we're working with IT so that we could provide as part of our CIP a camera surveillance system here at City Hall and actually throughout Civic Center. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, is there any questions on this slide? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Kelly.
Where are we with updating and expanding rooftop solar at Civic Center?
Thank you very much. We're hoping to have an update sometime next week from our contractor. It's been slow coming because of the CPUC ruling that was postponed for the net energy metering 3.0 that would have made a substantial difference to the cost benefit to us. And so I could tell you that the carport solar at Civic Center has gone under a review. We're looking at potentially maintaining the 2.0, which would make it cost efficient for us to actually do an update. Ryan Gaylor is still working on that project, and we're hoping to get an update very soon to the council.
It feels like that should be in the mix here as you keep a list of what's spending.
Most definitely, I'll get that noted. Thank you.
I have a question as well, since we're back on the slide. You mentioned that 36 metric tons were avoided. Can you let me know what some of those changes were and if there are opportunities in the next year to increase that? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So this is the current system that we have, and so staying on top of the maintenance of these EV charge stations is actually almost a full-time job, because you have those who are using the actual connector heads, and sometimes they're not as nice as we would want them to be with that piece of equipment. And so we're having to replace those heads inside of the electric charging stations. There's a lot of components inside. One of them includes a type of radiator reservoir that needs to be topped every so often and maintained. And so this represents these numbers, just the hard work that our team does to make sure that we're maintaining our current charge stations well. Future-wise, just about 2 weeks ago, Special Programs, who's now incorporated with Public Works, I took them on a tour of our current footprint. And then we're also working on expanding our EV charge stations and planning those out. So right now we have an internal a team that's looking at grants so that we can fund the actual charging heads. We're also currently working with Southern California Edison that provides about 80% grant funding so that we can go from the transformer to the stub. And so there's a team here in Public Works that is working together so that we could not only secure grants, but then also plan out where we're going to expand in the city. Obviously, the north sphere of the city has our eyes. We're also partnering up with economic development and planning so that we could strategically place these charge stations at commercial areas. So it's an exciting time right now.
Is there any plan to integrate hydrogen fueling systems in the near future?
It's interesting you bring that up. We, our team, and I'm sure that Amy Lawrence can speak to this later on, but our team came back from a conference that reviewed that, and it looks like hydrogen is making its way through the state level to become a contender with the electric charging stations. And so we're currently assessing that program.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Andy,
Yes.
is Discover Palm Desert not part of facilities?
Currently, it's not Discover Palm Desert. It is not currently under my purview right now.
It is currently, Eric Seha and Martina are working on that. Once the facility is built, it would be turned over to Andy. Are you talking about the new one?
Yeah, the new one. Are
Yeah,
we going to?
yeah.
I mean, I would think that's a major initiative somewhere. Are we going to be addressing that in the budget process?
Yes, Eric and Martine have accounted for the design costs. It's one of the priorities for funding under one-time dollars right now, since we still don't have a budget number for it.
So in terms of the budget process, do we need to address Discover Palm Desert this year's cycle?
No, I think that we basically got the one-time dollars set aside for a number of projects. That will be one of them. And we will circle back to you with our funding recommendations on that. But I think that we were planning on somewhere in the 2 to 3 million range for that particular facility. So we've got that and a couple other priorities that we're going to be recommending, taking you through the financing of those facilities in a little bit.
Okay, so the subcommittee's made great headway with the design team, and so not addressing it in the budget process will not slow down that process, because we've got good momentum finally.
Yeah, it's going to have to come out of general fund reserves, Abby. So that's going. I'll just kind of cut to the chase. That's how we're going to fund that.
Got it.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate cutting to the chase.
You got it.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll go on to the next slide, please. Well, I'm happy to share with you that the cost containment measures of this particular division of Public Works has taken Council's direction quite seriously and rapidly. We executed an agreement with SCE to convert 513 streetlights to LED. That happened obviously this fiscal year. I want to thank Council and our city manager for executing that quite quickly. This anticipates reducing 136 metric tons of greenhouse emissions coming next fiscal year, 22-23. Over a 20-year span, we're looking at saving nearly $500,000 over 20 years because of this program. Facilities, one of the changes that we did here at facilities was trying to increase our efficiencies. And so we migrated away from phone and text and emails and all that great stuff to a user-friendly app. And this has been improving our work order submissions and communications by about 75%. And so one of those areas that we're trying to always improve on. Other than that, I would like just to kind of just give some kudos to my team. We looked at some roof repairs that were needed. They said, hey, we could take that challenge. We don't have to waste any time in trying to get contractors out here. And so you could see here that last bullet point, they were able to tackle 17,000 square feet of roof repairs at Parkview, and then an additional 5,000 square feet at the Henderson Chamber of Commerce building. That actually saved the city about $20,000 doing that in-house. So just want to tip my hat off to my team.
Thank you to you and your team. Much appreciated.
Anytime.
Congratulations on that. That's really impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Moving on to our next slide, if we could. You'll notice here, obviously, the proposed budget. You have the prior year budget. One-time increases, for an example, will include the door fans that we talked about earlier here at City Hall. We do have some increases from years of deferred maintenance. We do have some costs that have increased because we transitioned our staff to being on call 24/7. This entails being available for the Sheriff's Dispatch and Training Center and also other buildings here at City Hall. As of recent, we've had some folks that have tried to open doors late at night. And so having our staff on call 24/7 is very important to protect our assets here at the city. So in addition to that, we've had increases to our utility costs. As I mentioned about a month ago at City Council, our utility rates are increasing as low as 5%, as high as 10%. And it seems like that's going to be the norm for some time. And we're not sure for how long, but 10% is 10%. So that's what this represents here on this slide.
Question, Andy, on that slide?
Yeah.
So the Portola Community Center, we have looked at the option before of moving the Chamber of Commerce to that facility and freeing up the Henderson building. It occurs to me that with the transition the chamber is going through, they're so underutilizing the space that they have currently. And because we've now gotten control of the surrounding area, is it still on the radar looking at the Henderson building property and putting it to a higher and better use while moving the chamber perhaps to the Portola Community Center? Is that on the radar for this coming year?
That's definitely an option. I would kindly defer to our city manager for direction on that.
Yes, I mean, that's all. I would never say never on that. It's always an option. We are currently in the process of putting together an assessment of the Portola Community Center. We just not sure that what investment needs to be made over there, and whether the building is laid out appropriately for all the uses that they have. So Andy Firestein is leading a team right now to do that assessment, so we can have a conversation with the city council about whether that's the appropriate space, and if so, what do we need to do to invest in it to make it more functional. So yeah, absolutely. Once we get that assessment done, we can have those conversations.
Yeah, and I'm frankly more focused on the possibility of moving the chamber out of the Henderson building.
Yeah.
Not as much as where they would go. Parkview building is a possibility. I mean, honestly, I don't think they need much space, and it could be. I mean, there's a possibility that they will change their business model, if you will. So
right.
The sense that there's an opportunity a potential opportunity in this coming year for moving forward with what has been a long-term goal, which is to put the Henderson building to a higher and better use, especially, as I said, now that we have control of the surrounding area.
Yeah, I think what I would probably counsel right now is let's see how the next month or two goes with them, where the conversations are, and if council wants to have that conversation about different uses depending on where they end up, or even if they do decide to recompose themselves in a different manner, then we can always have that conversation, and I would be happy to bring that up personally to them.
Thank you.
I think that we need to understand too that we not only need to recognize what it's going to take to make the Portola Community Center a functional building for whatever we choose to use it, but we also need to take a look as we go forward at the chamber business model and how they can best work within our community. So we have a couple things we need to find out before we make those decisions.
A couple few. We should also remember that they have some subtenants approved by us. So there's many moving parts, which the flag has been thrust into the ground successfully, I think, for today.
Great point. And so we've got a lot to analyze, to think about, and make these decisions. Thank you.
Very well. Great conversation. Let's move on to the next slide if we could. So one of our enhancements here at Public Works has been able to take a look at our organization. And so Parks and Rec, landscape, public-private partnerships has been a part of what we do here at Public Works. And so we recently updated this to community services to be more encompassing of the work that's being done in this particular division. We have no vacancies this year or the coming year, but some of the department successes that I wanted to share with you, and I think this is very pertinent to our conversation. We took a good look at our contract management with millions of dollars being overseen here at Public Works for our operations and maintenance contracts. It was very important that we looked at putting together a solidified effort with a mandatory RFP pre-bid meetings. We want to make sure that if people really want to work here, they got to show up to the first date. The next one was looking at the scope of work, making sure that we were detailed in our scope of work, our scope of services. And that led us to change a lot of our frequencies from monthly service to weekly service. And we want to thank the council for their support on that. Also here at the Civic Center Park, it's green and beautiful, lush. What's behind all of that include a water well pump, 3 booster pumps, just an extensive system. It's about a $2 million asset if we were to replace it. And so recently we upgraded the variable frequency drives there. We're finalizing the design for a remote monitoring system so that staff could actually be providing some supervision of that asset remotely and after hours. And so I'm happy to share with you that the Aquatic Center is also looking at some of successes as of late. There's a pool resurfacing project with in-water lighting that we're hoping to complete by the end of this month. We're also leading the charge here with the commission, the Parks and Rec Commission, for the North Sphere Regional Park Design and Planning RFP. I'm happy to share with everyone here that we had 16 firms that came out to the pre-bid meeting at the ACR room, and it was packed, and it was so nice to really see all of that come together. And so the commission is going to be reviewing the bids coming in shortly, and then we'll be getting that back to council. Moving over to major initiatives, want to share with you that as the city ages, the equipment ages, and so we are on top of it. The team is making big efforts to make sure that our playgrounds continue to be fun and safe citywide. We're also making a big effort with grant funding. So our team is working on grant funding to help supplement the installation of a restroom at the Bump and Grind and hopefully at Homie Adams. So we're thinking outside of the box and inside of the box at the same time. Also, I'm pretty happy to share with you that we'll be conducting a public outreach in the soon future at the community around Palma Village Park. In fact, you recently approved us to accept the allocation of state park funding of $200,000 that will be going towards that park. And we currently have about $300,000 in CDBG funding. And so we're looking at some new lighting, bench designs, junior street hockey that will replace a non-functional, not really used volleyball court there. As far as cost containment measures, I'm very, again, proud of this team. We sat down at the table and we looked at so many contracts that were floating for individual projects. And we said, hey, can we consolidate some of our admin contracts? And so we discovered about $100,000 of just various contracts that allowed us to go ahead and consolidate them so we could gain some higher economies of scale. And the council a few months ago approved this. And so this is allowing us to be very specific at improving our landscape to our main corridors and our parks. All right, any questions on that slide? No?
I do have a quick question. It says that you want to, let's see, develop a welcoming plant palette. Is that because it'll bloom at different times of the year? Is that it's native plants? What does that look like in the different areas? Thank you.
Great question that has come up from our staff and from council is that, we want to make sure that we're welcoming in the sense that that we have some color. I know that we're in the desert, but we're also a resort city. And so being able to marry those two ideas is very important. And so there are actual plant materials that are drought tolerant and they're colorful. And so if we can kind of just marry that moving forward, that's really pleasing. And so when you go to certain resort cities like ours, landscape goes a long way. And so we're wanting to make sure that we can kind of solidify what that look is going to be so that we're not just cactus space.
Thank you so much.
Okay, seeing no further questions, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. As you can see here, this is the community services budget that's before you. And just quickly, again, increases to our maintenance contracts because of inflation and what's going on in the economy. We are also focusing on a paint program so that we could actually protect our assets. Lighting, seed, believe it or not, seed and fertilizer continues to shoot up these days, labor wages and materials. And so this is what's represented here. We're looking also at a one-time transfer of 100,000 of the holiday lighting that was transferred into Public Works. And so we're making sure that Community Services Division handles that contract. All right, next slide, please. The Aquatic Center, again, another jewel here to our city. I know that there's been talk about the Aquatic Center, and the reason why we subsidize it, it actually leads into attracting more people that want to spend time here and buy food and all that great stuff. So it really is a great contributor to our revenue. As you'll see here for the Aquatic Center, there's a slight increase from the YMCA contract, staffing wages, increase to utilities. But we do have one-time expenditures that total $271,000. These are much needed based on what we have assessed and because of deferred maintenance over several years. But you can see there's some really neat items here that we're looking forward to next year to implement. Recreational pool equipment, making sure that we could take care of the shade structure that really allows people to kind of just enjoy some time after going into the pool, restroom partitions, perimeter windscreen. And so some really needed items there at the Aquatic Center. So it's not only inviting, but allows people to spend some time there.
Andy, were you pausing for questions? Sorry.
Oh, sure, please. I saw you looking over at me, so I was like, it's your turn.
I don't want to interrupt. I want to wait till you finish on the aquatic facility.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. So, coincidentally, at this morning's Parks and Rec Commission meeting, we became aware, and I wasn't aware, that usage fees for the public and other rental fees have not been adjusted since 2012. And that the YMCA apparently doesn't have that authority. The authority to adjust rates comes from the council. Right. And I wonder if it might be time after 10 years to review the usage rates that we charge to residents as well as non-residents. Would that be a possibility?
Yeah, I believe it is. In fact, just this past month, I was sitting with my team and I said, look, guys, let's look at this. Let's see how we can assess it and maybe provide some type of study so that we could take this back to council in the soon future. And so that is definitely part of our talks currently internally.
Okay, and I know David Keys and the YMCA can offer resources in terms of analyzing what our current rates are and maybe where they should be.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I see a lot of thinking going on, so thank you for that. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand this over to Amy Lawrence. She's the Special Programs Manager.
Thank you so much, Andy. Good morning, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Amy Lawrence, Special Programs Manager. In the fall of 2021, the City Manager established a Special Programs Division to facilitate the city's art and public places and environmental programs. So on this screen, you see quite a few successes and initiatives. I'm just going to highlight a few. Some of our highlights from the last year include selecting a sculpture for the San Pablo Phase 1 roundabout. We used a robust civic engagement process to include public input and also use the Engage Plum Desert website. We updated the city's solid waste and recycling franchise agreement with Vertec to include increased services and benefits to both Palm Desert residents and businesses. We further adopted enforceable mechanisms and began rolling out programs required by SB 1383, also known as the state's organics recycling mandate. Some of the major initiatives for next fiscal year include facilitation of the 23-24 El Paseo Sculpture Exhibition, to include the art pad and lighting replacement along the median. Now that the San Pablo Public Art Development Plan was approved, we will begin proposing artwork to be installed along the San Pablo corridor. Additionally, we will continue implementing various SB 1383 programs, such as edible food recovery, compost procurement and utilization, record keeping, public outreach, and more. We will also continue working to compile an environmental initiatives plan, which is in accordance with the City Council's established goals. This plan will include current and upcoming city projects, as well as proposed projects for future implementation. If there's no questions on this slide, we can move forward. So as for the Art and Public Places budget, the increase reflected is cost to facilitate the biannual El Paseo Sculpture Exhibition, replacement of the art pads and lighting on the street, replacement of the stolen Freedom Park sculpture, as well as requested funding for San Pablo Phase 2 roundabout sculpture. And then moving on to the Recycle Funds operating budget, the prior year budget shown does not reflect adjustments that were made during the year. So the actual increase for this fiscal year is about $120,000. And that will be to purchase recycle containers and also implement previously mentioned SB 1383 programs, some of which will be offset by grants received from Cal Recycle. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Amy, when you say the recycle containers, are those the in kitchen, or which containers are those?
Burtech, they supply the in kitchen containers, the kitchen pails. The containers we will be purchasing are ones that are given out to local businesses to implement recycling programs.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll jump back into Public Works Streets. Is that you, Andy?
Yes. Hello
Can
again,
I
everyone.
just one moment real quick. I just want to remind everybody, if there is need for a comfort break, please speak up
Thank
at
you.
any time.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving over to our streets division, very proud of, again, this team and all the hard efforts that they put. We recently completed phase 1 and 2 of the Alessandro West Street landscape and drainage improvements. That was a $2.2 million project. Also, the slurry seal for the public roadways south of Highway 111 and east of Highway 74. That was a $1.3 million project that was headed up by Ryan Gaylor. Fantastic work there. We started our next slurry project in the North Sphere and also the Palm Desert Country Club area. That's a $2.2 million project. It's really nice to see the work that's being done there to fill in the cracks, the gaps, and making sure that our streets are not only black, but maintain our pavement condition index of 80%. Got to tell you, that is a remarkable index rating for a city like ours. I also wanted to shine some light on something that's probably small, but it has a huge impact, and that is graffiti removal. As the city continues to grow and residents come from all over to visit our beautiful city, that means that there's also an increase in graffiti. And so each quarter, the team is abating about 1,000 locations of graffiti here in our city on a quarterly basis. And so again, I tip my hat off to the team. We've made some huge improvements to the operations, and that's just one of them. And so there's more accomplishments you can see on this slide, but those are the areas that I wanted to highlight.
Andy, quick question on the graffiti. I recently learned, and I'm sure for select places, that there is paint that is resistant to graffiti. Is there certain places where this may be useful, or is it too broad? But do you have specific issues that are frequently targeted?
Yeah, at this point, we don't have like the areas that are always happening. They're kind of very sporadic right now. But in those areas where we need to go for that anti-graffiti paint, we definitely will do that.
Thank you very much.
Seeing no further questions, if we can go to the next slide, please.
I have
sure.
a comment and a question. First of all, I make no qualms about it. I have no qualms. I brag about our PCI any chance I get. But I do have a question. Years ago, the cost of the graffiti abatement program was almost $250,000 a year, and that included all costs, with personnel, with product, and so forth. Are we able to put a number on that at this point?
We haven't done that as of late, but we can.
I just think it's one of those things that's important for people to understand the effort that the city goes through and the cost that's associated.
Noted. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. I'm very excited to share this slide with you. Major initiatives for this coming fiscal year. We have been putting together the bid package, identifying areas that need to be reconstructed on Cook Street. And so this includes some sidewalk improvements, ADA, but most of all, the path of travel on the streets. And so Cook Street, north and southbound, approximately 2.25 miles of a grind and overlay project will be going out to bid at the end of this month. And so wanted to share that with you because I know it's a main corridor here in our city. We're also looking at the Haystack Channel stormwater improvements and permits. Very important channel that conveys our stormwater. And so we are working with the an engineering design firm so that we can make sure that we get the improvements and permits necessary to take care of the Haystack Channel. We're going to be commencing the 5-year CIP for the pavement management program and street asset inventory. Our goal is to include signage, some striping, street lights, and signal lights, if possible, with this program, so we could understand our actual inventory and then be able to sparse that out over a 5-year period and understand what needs to be done in year 1, year 2, year 3, and onwards, so that we actually have a good method to our work in maintaining our streets. Moving over to cost containment measures, I'm happy to share with you that our team is using AQMD grant funding, about $70,000 worth, to pay for the city's street sweeping regional partnership with CVAG and other cities. So that is a cost containment measure that we're very proud of. Any questions on this slide?
I have a question on that. I know we were going out for an RFP on the street sweeper. Where are we on that?
Yes, so a portion of the street sweeping that is not part of the regional contract is for parking lots and residential areas, and I believe commercial areas. And so after this meeting, I am running to another meeting specifically to speak to Clean Street that put a bid in for the street sweeping RFP. And so I'll have more information after that meeting.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Andy, couple items on this slide. So the utility undergrounding master plan, it feels like every year this is on our budget or list of goals somewhere. And for years, we've struggled with how we can be effective in expanding the undergrounding. We understand after many years of effort and a huge amount of resources that, you know, one big bite at the apple is not going to do it. But we did hire a consultant to develop a more user-friendly approach for neighborhoods that want to engage in the process of undergrounding. let me suggest that it might be time to put the subcommittee together again, review where we are and address next steps. Because it's just kind of been hanging out there for too long, in my opinion. Would that be okay?
Most definitely. In fact, I have some of our staff that are involved in this project that are viewing, and I just got a text that we definitely will be taking this to the subcommittee.
Excellent, thank you.
Review and update.
Yeah, and we had come up with some potential solutions and suggestions, and we can follow up on where that is. And if anybody has questions, they can certainly contact me. I have plenty of notes.
On that note, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm very pleased that the council moved forward on the Rule 20A funding for the CHIA project. And so, again, making positive steps, but we can look at the overall master plan in more depth coming soon.
Yeah, I had shared with our city manager that was a promise the city made to the residents as part of the Ironwood Park development. So it may be a while. It took a while, but we're fulfilling that promise finally to underground those lines. The second point I want to make is that in an earlier slide, you talked about flashing light stop signs. And I see Randy on the call. We went through CV Link, and unfortunately, but unavoidably, there are many intersections that abut CV Link, and we looked at the possibility of various safety measures, including solar-powered flashing lights and so forth. Is that a part of this street budget, or is that a separate item?
It's going to be both, Savvy. We have a specific project in the proposed CIP for enhancements to CV Link, but we're also deploying those signs at other locations, and those will be part of our operating budget.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, if we can go to the next slide, please. And here we have the proposed budget versus last year's budget. You'll see one-time expenditures for streets, the streets division that include a grinder, which will help us to combat some of the leveling issues that we have on sidewalks throughout the city. Paint sprayer, fuel system reader card, and one of the things that I think you'll be pleased to see is that we have about $300,000 that will be our portion to reimburse the developers so that we could get technology drive extended to Gerald Ford. And so that's where you see that $300,000 coming from. Okay, next slide, please. And now I'll pass it back over to my compadre here at Public Works, Randy Bowman.
Thanks, Andy. So this last year, I think a major item of highlight is conducting a strategic plan for our traffic maintenance and operations. The CVAG CV Sync project certainly poses an opportunity for the city in improving synchronization of our traffic signals on our major roadways as a part of the valley-wide effort. But certainly that also requires us to look inward and adjust our operations and our maintenance schemes to maintain these new elements that are being added to our traffic signal system. So a lot of our operations are, yes, maintaining what we have, but also we're planning for the new technology that's being installed by the CVAG project. And next week, we're kicking off the neighborhood traffic management plan. There are 3 public meetings that are planned next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. And Bassam is going to be leading the NTMP effort. We also continue to upgrade and maintain our existing hardware. As Andy said, things get old, things need to be replaced. And Sun is certainly very hard on electronics. So we continue year after year to replace antiquated and failing traffic signal components. And really the theme of this department has been asset management, knowing what our assets are, inventorying them. Andy alluded to it with the pavement management. We own many assets in this community, and it's incumbent upon this department to maintain many of those assets, to know their condition and have a long-term plan for operation and maintenance. That's what I want to say about this slide. Any questions?
My question, Randy, is in terms of I'm a big fan of the flashing stop signs. What is the plan? How many more are coming? And is there a possibility that there's a way to highlight the speed limits? I know the presentation that had the nice yellow border at the stoplights to reflect. Is there an additional way to say this is the speed limit? Don't try to get creative.
So we've been engaged in really kind of a triage right now on where to install flashing stop signs, flashing yield signs, as well as the speed indicator signs, your speed is blank. We're going to switch to a more planned mode through the neighborhood traffic management plan. What we typically look at is enforcement feedback from the sheriff's office. We look at crash hotspots. If council remembers, the local road safety plan that council accepted last summer has been a huge informer to where we need to be focusing our energies. You know, we want people to stop at stop signs, and certainly these flashing devices really do help with compliance.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate the ones that are right down the street from Palm Desert Charter and Lincoln Elementary. Those are places that people often speed. So I appreciate that safety, and I hope that can continue into other areas. Thank you, thank you, thank you, team.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? All right, we'll go to the next slide. So the budget summary for this slide. Previously, the traffic work unit, which consists of 4 individuals, that was part of our streets budget for performance management, for KPIs, for budgeting. We wanted to break this group out. So this is the first time this traffic group has its own work group budget, and we'll be monitoring their performance with subsequent budgeting years. Any questions? All right, thank you. Thank you, Veronica.
You're welcome. So we're about halfway through the presentation today. I'm just going to put it out there. If you guys want to do a 7th inning stretch, we can do that right now, or we can jump into the next portion if you'd like.
Okay, folks, what would you like to do?
Let's take a 7-minute, 7-inning stretch.
Okay, great idea. And I'd like everybody to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game during that. I'll see you back in 7 minutes.
Last person on has to sing it.
I'm sorry.
I said, last person with their camera on has to sing the "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." Excluding the mayor, because she told us that she's going to give us all motion sickness on her travels. So mayor's exempt.
I'm just dreaming of a Dodger dog right now.
If you struggle to lose weight, you
So I think we're just about where we need to be, and let's pick up. As long as everybody is ready, let's keep going.
Okay. So can you guys see my screen? Okay. We're going to jump into the capital improvement program today. The first part of this presentation, it's going to be very high level on the public works side. They provided you with a white paper in your packet, and they're going to go through some of the projects there, and then we'll head over to economic development and they will touch on theirs. At the end of that, if you want to go through any of the detail that was included in the CIP packet that we sent out to you under number 6, we are more than happy to do that. But for right now, we will turn it over to me. This is the overall summary as far as the funding goes. So this is the one that we showed you at the beginning of the presentation yesterday. We are looking at year 1 of 28.6 million in projects and carryover balances of 45.5 million. And about in total over the 5 years, about 40 million that remains unfunded that we will have to figure out a way to fund. And we have a plan that we mentioned at the end of this presentation that we will bring to you. But we will go through each of the public works items that are included in this summary on the next page, if that's okay with you. So I will turn it over to Randy or Andy, I'm not sure which one.
All right, thank you very much, Veronica. So we're not going to go through line by line. We'd rather entertain questions from the council, but we thought it would help to characterize projects that are in the proposed CIP under different ideas. And this table on this page lists the capital improvement projects proposed that are either contractually obligated or are funded through available restricted funds, meaning funds that can be used only for certain specific purposes. Just pull out a couple of things. Savvy to your question, CD link enhancements. That's one of the proposed projects in the 5-year CIP in year 1. And we're proposing that under a new construction tax. We've got the Haystack Road traffic calming improvements. Also, one of the restrooms that Andy mentioned is through the trust fund. And the Palma Village Park improvements, that's the CDBG, and also chasing after state grants for that. And then the Rule 28 credits for utility undergrounding.
Randy, could you remind me of the rough boundaries of Section 29?
Section 29 roughly is east of Monterey Avenue, north of Dinah, and all the way to Portola, south of I-10. I think it's a roughly 500, probably a little more than 500 acres. Any other questions? Let's move to the next slide now. Thanks, Veronica. The next table is another flavor of projects to highlight that address health, safety, other critical areas. A lot of this is maintenance type of activity, whether it's parking lots, securing City Hall through improved sliding doors. I think Andy mentioned that, adding a generator to the courtyard. And I think very important, continuing the department's theme of knowing what our assets are, what condition they are in, so we can plan for them. That's the facilities maintenance and capital improvement master plan. We've done so much for horizontal assets in the city, whether it's our pavements, our active transportation assets. We need to do this also for our vertical assets, and Andy is doing a good job in leading that effort. Andy, anything else to highlight from this slide? This tends to be more focused on you.
Oh, thanks, Randy. I would just mention that in addition to what was said here, we were very specific on the items that were more on the, hey, this is really important for us to bring forward so that we could reduce our liabilities, reduce any claims to the city. And so these items here were well thought through from our team collectively, and continue to provide a good representation of all of the amenities that we provide here.
Thanks, Eddie. Next slide, please, Veronica. And then this last table of highlights, again, things that enhance the quality of life and increase amenities and recreational opportunities. The SandPro machine, that's the device that we mentioned earlier that levels sand. I think of it as a thing for ice hockey rinks, but actually it's for sand. As well as the roundabout sculpture in San Pablo Phase 1, the restroom proposed for the bump and grind, the Development Services Office space improvements. We're going to cover that in a little more detail on an upcoming slide, but that's what we have on this slide. Any questions?
Oh, and here is that little electric street sweeper for CV Link.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. All right, let's go next slide, Veronica, please. Do you want to lead this off, Veronica?
Let me unmute myself. So what we did after we identified all the projects for the 5-year CIP, we took a look at where we needed funding. These were the ideas that staff came up with of how to fund these items, given that we would have to identify any outside sources in the interim. But until that point, primarily general fund reserves is where we would have to tap for a lot of these projects to complete. As you can see, there are a few of these that are asterisked, and we did that to let you know these are amounts that we have currently sitting in our CIP, but we know that they need to be looked at again. They are probably much greater than what you see here, and so that will also potentially take a hit on the general fund reserve. I believe that's all I have on this. We do have information on the North Sphere Fire Station and the rehabs of the other 2 fire stations being presented tomorrow. And we are happy to get into any of the details on this slide if you'd like.
If I may, I'd like to add a couple of details.
Sorry, Randy.
No problem. The Development Services Office space improvements. So the City Council awarded last fall a design build contract for the Development Services lobby improvements to put in place in the physical realm a counter system that matches the city's change to the one-stop shop. And we have been engaging with the design builder. We had early concepts. We reviewed those with the city manager. City manager asked if we would, while we're in the planning stage for the improvements, to look at the whole of the Development Services wing of City Hall, lest we put in place something in the lobby improvement that we might have to undo and therefore waste money in the future if we were to make further improvements to modernize the Development Services wing. We are meeting tomorrow with the city manager to brief him on the results of our work with the design builder and looking at potential additional or future improvements. So this $2 million we put as a placeholder for the purpose of a proposed budget, and following tomorrow's meeting, if there's some additional direction, we'll provide updates to the city council on that improvement. Yes, ma'am.
Some of these items that are priority 3 as opposed to priority 1 look like they might have the most promise for qualifying for additional grants that could come down the pike, because they're the sort of thing that the federal government and the state and SCAG are really promoting, such as BD Link, such as the mid-block crossing, all of these things that support active transportation. So even though something's priority 3, are we on top of every possible grant opportunity we might want to capitalize upon, even if something isn't at the top of the list?
In short, yes, we're on top of that. I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there is a new federal grant program directly out of USDOT, directly to applicants, so it doesn't come through the states, for Safe Streets for All, I think is the name of the program. And that could very well be a major opportunity for communities for active transportation or safety related. We put these improvements as priority 3 because we think that the value of these improvements could very well be covered by ATP, Highway Safety Improvement Program monies, SBH 21, or this potentially this new federal program. So that's why we rank them low rather than ranking them 1. Let's see how our efforts are for all 3 flavors of grant programs that will be applying for. Boy, that was bad grammar. We'll be applying for ATP in June, and then we'll be applying for the Highway Safety Improvement Program funds in September. And this new federal program is somewhere around the same time as the HSIP funding. So we're going to make a big grab for funds. We have great planning work that's been done to identify specific locations, specific improvements with general dollar amounts associated with that. We're very well informed to be applying for those 3 flavors of grant funds.
Veronica, just one more comment or a couple more comments on this slide. We will be recommending to council that we move forward with the Development Services Office improvements in this upcoming year budget. Veronica will take you through the fire station updated numbers, and with the North Sphere Park, that is a placeholder number right now. We know this is important to council. But until we get in and actually have a concept plan design and all of you can debate what all you would like to see on that site, we're not sure exactly where that number is going to be. If it's substantially higher than the 15 million, then staff will get together and we will bring back a recommendation on how to make that happen.
Yeah. Sorry, Savvy. The other thing I just wanted to hit on that Todd didn't mention was we spoke about Discover Palm Desert earlier, and that's not listed here currently. Currently in the budget, we are listing Discover Palm Desert at the estimated $1.2 million. And that entire budget is covered by bond funds. So that's why you don't see it here. When we have updated numbers for that construction, it will also be vying for the balance, will be vying for potentially reserve funds.
Very good. So that was one of my questions. Thank you, Veronica. By the way, in terms of grant funding, it's my understanding that some of our fellow cities in the Coachella Valley received substantial funding for parks, and we couldn't even apply because we weren't shovel ready. So I certainly hope that we focus on those opportunities for the North Sphere Park. My question to you is, I see that we're looking at bond funding for the fire station. Would it be possible to combine bond funding for both the fire station and the park?
Yeah, when we look at future funding, that's definitely one of the things we would potentially look at. Those bond funds that are there are ones that we issued in the mid-2000s that we're still carrying funds for. So there's no money there to tap for the parks, but if we do have to issue future bonds, we would.
I see. Okay, thank you.
So if there are no additional questions on this worksheet, we can move on to the next one if you'd like. Okay. We're going to move on to Mr. Seha, and he's going to go through a few of his projects on the CIP.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. We've already had some conversation on Discover Palm Desert today. This is for the new visitor services center here at the Civic Center campus. And Veronica's explained some of the financing that we're looking at to fund that development. In terms of Lupin Plaza, we have a preliminary approval for the design. We are now working with our team at Public Works to get a new RFP out, to work with an engineer to actually develop those plans. That would include a cost estimate for what that plaza would entail. And we're looking at possibly having to use reserves for that or identify other funding sources to create urban green or public spaces. For broadband, we're along a similar path. We're exploring the various options that are available for the city to have broadband service. That could include some sort of enterprise. But right now, we're still developing what those options will be, and we'll present those to the council at a later date. And I can answer any questions.
If there are none, if I could go back up to this page and respond to Sabby's question, we definitely could include the fire station in a new bond issuance with the park. But let me be clear, we have a different financing plan for the new fire station. It would require a finding of benefit, of regional benefit, but we do believe we have bond funds that are available to use for that station as well.
Yeah, Veronica, thank you. And you know much more about this than I do, but I think we do have some incremental revenues anticipated based on the construction of new residential and property taxes. And so it occurs to me that that's one methodology for future bond funding is you can essentially secure the bonds by that future revenue. And I'm just suggesting that that be viewed as an option. I'm not recommending that, but it certainly should be on the table, I would think.
Yeah, we are looking at all options right now, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I believe that's the end of our day today. If there are no further questions, we look forward to seeing you all on May 10th at 9 a.m. I have one follow-up for myself and Martine, I should say, and that was the update of the North Sphere worksheet. We'll have that available to you. I know there were a lot of directions for Public Works, but if there's nothing else, that's the follow-up I have listed.
Actually, I think on the agenda, there was like questions or suggestions for the next meeting. I thought I saw that. Let me put a question out there that I hope we can address. Yesterday, we found out that the projected budget includes a deficit of, I think it was around $278,000. And I would very much like for staff to sharpen their pencils, because these are projections, they're guesses, and I know we usually exceed them. But from an optics standpoint, I would love to present a balanced budget, assuming that it's realistic. I'm not saying let's make magic numbers, but if we can look at some of the assumptions that were made, tweak a few numbers here and there in a $70 million budget, I hope we can project a balanced budget.
And I thought the meeting's 9:30.
We did move it back, Veronica, to 9:30.
Oh, I looked at the wrong sheet. Sorry, Gina. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to make a comment. Sabby made a request. That's one council member request. I'd like to hear other council members weigh in on that thought.
Here I am. I do recall that as you went through the revenue forecast, you emphasized several times that we were taking a pretty conservative stance. My thought would be we don't want to alter our approach, but it's entirely possible updates between now and next week or between now and June on such issues as sales tax would enable us to be somewhat more positive in our forecast. So we need to be consistent in what our predictive philosophy is, but let's look for opportunities for new information to achieve what Sabby described, which would be desirable if it's justifiable.
My quick thoughts on that is in support of what my peers said. but also in terms of the magic that the team has worked, and that's the internal use of our talents. So not to put that additional pressure on staff to say, hey, now these are your duties, but I'm wondering how much of that can be redirected utilizing the internal, amazing, very strong team.
And I would just add, since Sabby is the CPA amongst us, I tend to defer to him on accounting matters.
This isn't really an accounting matter. This is a policy matter for the city. So
Right.
we'd love to hear your view on that.
I side with Sabby.
Great. Okay. I'm glad to hear everybody chimed in, and it sounds like we have direction on that then.
And I just want to clarify with everyone, I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think we could probably balance it fairly quickly. I do want to remind folks, though, that some of our CIP projects are relying upon us, tapping general fund reserves. Do you see that as a distinction with a difference? And how are you viewing that?
Well, that's what they're for.
Okay.
We're not a business that has shareholders to whom we're supposed to return money. We're supposed to return services. So we want to maintain a prudent reserve, as historically we have done and as has been proposed to us here. But we also want to tackle those important projects that have been identified.
Yeah, I concur. I think those two goals are not mutually exclusive, and putting our reserves to good and prudent use is appropriate. Looking at the operating reserve, the general fund reserve from another perspective, personally, I would have difficulty approving a deficit budget. And if a reasonable, after having this discussion, if a reasonable review of some of the assumptions doesn't result in a balanced budget, then personally, I would feel a need to look at cutting some of the proposed expenditures, because I think from a policy standpoint, it's incumbent on this council to shoot for a balanced budget. And to the mayor's point, that's me speaking. I never pretend to speak for the council, but that's my perspective on the general fund budget.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Just understanding where you're coming from, and I don't think there's going to be much of an issue. I can get with Veronica, and we'll have it balanced by next week. There's been a couple other movements to Kathleen's point in the last few days that have made that possible.
Perfect. Thanks again to the staff for putting on an amazing meeting. You all shine. I just love this. It's the best I can recall. Great job.
Are there any other comments from council?
My comment is every day I feel more and more proud to be part of the city and the amazing team that we have. Our employees are top notch and shiny. Thank you.
And anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Really an outstanding job. Veronica, thank you for jumping in on this and looking at things from a different direction, different perspective. And I think we really have had a couple great meetings, and I know our last one will be as equally as terrific. And thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks for your time.